I thought I knew my wife. Then I saw a photo. I never thought I would write something like this. Not on the internet, not in a place where strangers skim for drama and click away, but I have boxes stacked in my living room with the kind of careful indifference that only someone who is 2 weeks away from moving can cultivate. And I have a stupid, heavy pile of kids' drawings on the table that smell like markers and milk. And I have a quiet that feels like a bruise. So here I am, because putting words on a screen feels safer than saying them out loud to people who know me. My name is Max. I'm 37, married for 7 years, together for almost 15. 2 kids, Vanya, 7, and Liza, 4. I work in IT. My wife, Katya, is a project manager at a small PR firm. We have an ordinary life. Cramped mornings, IKEA furniture that never quite looks like the inspiration photos, weekend grocery runs, awkward small talk with in-laws. We're not extraordinary people. Which is what made it worse when everything ordinary started to feel like a stage prop in an unfamiliar play. This is going to be long because it has to be. I will try to be honest. I will probably contradict myself. I will probably make mistakes about timelines and what counts as evidence. I am not proud and I am not innocent. I did some things I'm not proud of. But I also have been hurt in ways I didn't think were possible outside of novels and movies. This is my version. I noticed the first signs and dismissed them. That's what you do, right? You excuse things because you want to keep the life you have. Late nights at the office. Project crunch. New perfume? A sample from a client meeting. A text that she laughed at and then hid the screen. A meme she didn't want me to see. Denial is not dramatic. It's just slow erosion. At first it was small details. Katya started taking longer to come home. Not a couple of hours, whole evenings. She'd say she had to finish something, that an event ran late. I gave the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to. When she did come home, she was more guarded. That was the first real change, not in what she did, but in how she did it. Her laugh felt practiced, like an actor who'd gotten good at hitting his line. Her phone was face down more often. She'd angle herself away so I couldn't see the screen. She stopped sharing the little things. The random office joke, the cute thing Vanya said at daycare, the song she heard on a playlist and wanted me to like. Things we had always exchanged during dinner became small private items she kept folded inside herself. The wake-up call wasn't dramatic. There was no dramatic text, no phone call, no cheating spouse soundtracked by violin. I was scrolling through a device she'd left on the kitchen table, not because I wanted to snoop, but because it needed to be charged and I thought I might as well. I saw a notification pop up, Artem 0247. I don't know why that felt important, except it did. The time, 2 in the morning, and the fact her face in the preview looked different somehow. I didn't open it. At home, we told ourselves stories to survive. At night, when the world is quieter, lies feel louder. That night, I did something I've never admitted to anyone. I followed my nose. Not in a thrilling detective way, but in a lazy human way. She had a laptop on the coffee table, logged in but with a locked screensaver. I didn't crack anything fancy. I just waited for her to go to brush her teeth and watched the little LED glint on the keyboard and typed her password because I remembered it from years ago. The stupid anniversary combo we both used because we were young and careless. It unlocked. There it was. A thread with a name I'd never really registered as important. Artem. Messages from late at night, short bursts. You here? Miss you. A selfie, the kind people send at 1 a.m. When the bar closes and the street is damp and you feel like you're having a different life than the one you leave at home. I didn't immediately go nuclear. I waited. Pretended to be fine. Ate cold pizza alone in the kitchen while the kids watched cartoons in the living room. I told myself it was just a mistake to read someone else's private messages. I told myself it was work. I tried to be the reasonable person. But then more things piled on. A coffee mug that didn't belong to our set. Unfamiliar lipstick on a napkin. A jacket in the back of the car that wasn't hers. Receipts from cafes she'd never mentioned. The worst was a photo I found by accident on a cloud backup. Someone else's camera roll showing Katya and a man in a car at night, both of them laughing, her cheek pressed to his. The image was casual, the kind you take when everything feels light and secret. She looked like she felt 30 years younger. He looked like he'd heard the best joke in the world. From that moment, denial and rationalization stopped being useful tools. They felt like an insult. The only thing I could think to do was collect. Not because I needed proof to convince the world. How embarrassing would it be to drag your marriage through public proof? But because I needed to know if my feelings were grounded in reality or if I was inventing a monster from the gaps of my imagination. So I watched. Not in an overt spy movie sense, no hidden cameras, no dramatic stakeouts. I watched more mindlessly. I noticed the little rituals she started to have. Phone face down, bathroom mirror longer, perfume with a different note. She changed passwords. She started going out for work drinks on Thursdays, always Thursdays. I found one of those photos with a caption, "Best Night," and the timestamp said Thursday. At first, I confronted with softness, which now looks like cowardice. I asked her if anything was happening at work, if she felt disconnected, if she'd met someone. She smiled the way she smiles when she wants to protect me from the truth. "It's nothing, Max. I'm fine. You're reading into things." That line, it's the kind you use on yourself at 3 a.m. to stop waking up in cold sweats. It's the line people use when they've already rehearsed their exit. I should have demanded a conversation. I should have dragged the truth out like a stubborn root. Instead, I made a different, more ruinous decision. I started to gather evidence and plan my strategy in silence. I told myself I would wait for the right moment to confront her, that I'd have the receipts, the timeline, that I'd be calm, I'd be rational. I imagined winning back our marriage through logic. That notion now seems absurd. Emotions don't bend to logic. They burn. When it finally happened, the confrontation, it was messy and terrible and small all at once. I remember we were in the kitchen. Vanya had a drawing taped to the fridge that said "Mom and Dad Forever" in wobbling letters. Liza was coloring on the table. It should have been the most ordinary hour of our lives, and instead everything felt like it was on the edge of a cliff. "Who is Artem?" I said it plainly, no theatrics, just the two words. She froze the way people freeze on camera, like a deer reflecting headlights. Her fingers clenched the tea towel, then relaxed. She looked at the kids playing and then at me, and for the first time I saw a human detail I hadn't been able to see in weeks. Real fear. Not the frightened kind that hides in secret, but the fearful resignation of someone who finally knows the music's been heard. "He's someone from work," she said. "It's nothing, Max, I told you. It's not nothing. You're emailing him. You're going out with him." "I found photos, Katya. I have them. Why are you doing this?" Her voice was small. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Then she said something I still replay. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to say that I was unhappy." Hurt made everything honest. When you're hurt, you don't edit for kindness. You throw everything at once. "Unhappy how?" I asked. She started to cry quietly, the soft, guilty tears of someone who knows they are breaking something. She told me about late nights when she felt unappreciated, about the small humiliations that pile up over years, lunches alone, my minute attention to email over her story about her day, my passive-aggressive comments about spending, my jokes about her work schedule that once she laughed at and now felt like cuts. She said she felt invisible sometimes, like she was a roommate rather than a partner. She said she had started talking to someone who listened in a way I hadn't. She said she didn't plan to hurt me. At first it sounded like an excuse. Later, as more pieces fell into place, I realized there was truth in it. We had rooms in the same house we never visited. We were co-parents and roommates more than lovers. We had stopped checking in for one another in the daily crucial ways. Emotional housekeeping. I had not done every cruel thing, but I had done the slow ones. Indifference, complacency, the small betrayals that add up. That didn't absolve her. It didn't make the photo any less real. It didn't make the nights she came home late any less late. But it framed things in a way that made me see both of us, not as heroic victims and villains, but as people who lost their way. We separated the house that day in a strange, pragmatic way. Not dramatic, not like in a movie where someone slams a door. We decided to sleep in different rooms for a while. We agreed, silently and then aloud, that we would not make any decisions in front of the kids. That lasted about a week before the kids started asking questions that felt like little knives. Vanya asked why Mama and Papa weren't sleeping together, and Liza asked if the house was broken. How do you answer a 4-year-old who thinks home is a single warm bed and two people who stay close? We tried counseling. Catastrophically, it was both helpful and useless. Helpful because it provided a space where we could say things that felt too dangerous to say at home. Useless because the counselor asked us to do homework, to try small rituals of reconnection, and those things often felt performative. Something between the counselor's suggestions and our reality kept slipping, like a poorly tied shoelace. At some sessions, she would cry, and I would think this was a moment where we might turn. Other sessions felt like two people in adjacent tunnels shouting. The words didn't quite line up. The affair, and yes, it was an affair. I have no use for watered-down euphemisms now, lasted several months in secret. It wasn't a movie affair, loud, sexy, obvious. It was towns and trains and coffee downstairs and cheek kisses in the corridor of a hotel. It was a slow slide from attention to attachment. They told each other things that they didn't tell their partners, small confessions, old wounds, ambitions. There is a dangerous intimacy in being the first person who listens with full attention in a while. Humans misinterpret attention for affection sometimes. We equate being seen with being loved. When I confronted Artem, I did it like a coward via text, and he was blunt and annoyed and defensive. He told me politely that Katya was an adult and they were consenting to a relationship. Which, yes, is true. There was no legal villain here, no one punched a wall and swore. The moral contours were blurred by the fact that we had no fires of rage, and yet also had no truth. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to break something of his that he loved. But I didn't. I texted because I was ashamed to have a conversation that would require being vulnerable. We fought in that slow, corrosive way that long marriages fight. Not with loud blows, but with frost. We started to keep each other at a distance that made our other obligations, going to the kids' events, fixing the plumbing, paying the mortgage, into shared tasks rather than shared life. I became a walking ledger of what needed to be done. She became a ghost who still stood at the sink. There were nights I found myself awake at 3 a.m., rehearsing confrontations I never had the courage to stage. I would imagine unrolling the photos on the table and placing every receipt and message in neat piles like a prosecutor. So neat, so undeniable. I would imagine winning back our life through argument. What I didn't realize then was that truth is not always persuasive. Evidence doesn't always bring people back. Sometimes it only clarifies the scale of what's been lost. We tried to negotiate a new normal. She wanted to keep the kids mostly with me, karmic, practical, a way to maintain stability. I wanted clarity and honesty. We sketched schedules and division of labor and rules about contact. People kept telling me, you should leave, and I'd nod because leaving felt like the bold thing. But leaving felt dramatic and permanent. Staying felt like a slow draining. In the middle of it all, the kids needed bedtime stories, a plate of food, someone to clap for them at school performances. You learn to be decisive about nothing and helpless about everything that matters. The internet, of course, is not a friend in times like this. I read forum threads about how to catch a cheating spouse, about legal steps, about custody. I read stories that made me seethe with rage, others that made me ache for humanity. People told me to get a lawyer, to lock down finances, to begin divorce proceedings. I did some of that. I froze a credit card. I changed passwords. The spreadsheet I made of messages and dates felt like armor, like concentrated evidence of pain. It also felt deeply pathetic. Me making lists, like I could quantify heartbreak and solve it. Therapy for myself helped, in a way I didn't fully anticipate. I started to think about all the small ways I had abdicated attention. Work had become a drug. Deadlines, the quiet stoicism of a man who brings home a paycheck. I had been physically present and emotionally absent in ways that weren't headline-worthy, but were deadly in their accumulation. I was not absolving myself. I had my own failures. A marriage is two people leaning, and we both leaned wrong. There were moments of surreal normalcy that made the pain worse because they felt like a cruel joke. We would go to the kids' recital together, sit in the same row, and clap at the same moment. People would smile at us in the foyer. We would smile back like trained actors. I have never envied someone who can keep a secret so large it reshapes a life. It's a skill that requires cruelty and practice. At some point, the affair became less secret and more the open wound it always was meant to be. Artem and Katya's dynamic shifted, the novelty faded, or perhaps the reality of consequences crept in. They started to argue about small things in the way people who are tired of hiding begin to. She came home once, and I could tell something had changed. "It's over," she said. She said it like someone announcing a plan, not triumphant, not relieved, just stating. Maybe it was a relief for her. For me, it landed like a dull stone. I wanted to be angry that it took ending for her to return, but mostly I felt tired. We tried again to talk. This time, the talks were different because there was less of the adrenaline of discovery and more of the exhaustion of aftermath. She apologized. She acknowledged the affair and the selfishness of it. She told me she wanted to try and make amends. She said she wanted to be with me. I wanted to believe her like I wanted to believe in magic. But we had to rebuild trust with the tools we had. Conversations, therapy, tiny gestures. She let me look at her phone. She stopped the late-night work drinks. We made rules like children make promises, earnestly but precariously. Then came a betrayal I didn't expect. Even after the affair had ended, I started to find small ways she was still distant. Sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, she would close off again. She'd flinch at touch. She'd avoid deep conversations. There were moments when her excuses felt real and other times when they felt like safety mechanisms. It was like trying to resuscitate someone who'd been brought back once and then sank again. The hardest part was that everyone has opinions, and most of them are cruelly simple. Friends told me to leave. Family said we should fix it for the kids. Colleagues offered awkward sympathy. I was judged for being hurt and for not immediately ending everything. I was told I was a nice guy, as if being kind is a crime. People's advice rarely fit my life. Just go was easy to say when you don't have a 7-year-old who will sleepwalk into your bed during storms. Stay and fight was easy for others who weren't the ones holding a folder of receipts at 2 a.m. There were days I wanted to be the angry, cinematic ex-husband. I wanted to smash plates and burn the curtains. Anger is dramatic and feels productive. But most of my life is not cinematic. Most nights I made instant noodles and read bedtime stories with my children. Most mornings I buttoned shirts and packed bags and drove carpools. The small work of being a parent continued while our marriage trembled. We reached a point where we had to make a choice because indecision is its own cruelty. We talked about separation in the logistical way people do when they try to be humane. We sketched a custody schedule that kept stability for the kids. We divided shared accounts. We decided to tell the kids a simplified truth. Sometimes marriage doesn't work out, and it's not their fault. How do you explain the shape of heartbreak to small people who think love is a cookie cutter and forever? The day we told them was worse than I thought it would be. Vanya asked if Mama was leaving because of him. Liza cried and asked if she would still see her every day. The words, "It's not your fault," feel professional and small and true. We hugged them and let them cry and tried to answer their questions honestly, but without dragging them into adult pain. I learned in that moment that even the most righteous anger gets overshadowed by the power of being dad when your child needs you. Since then, life has been a succession of small adjustments. We still go to school events with our co-parenting awkwardness like a public performance. We split holidays and birthdays and try to navigate the grey territory of family gatherings where one person is absent and another is conspicuously present. The kids are resilient in ways adults pretend to be. They find new traditions where old ones fall apart. It's humbling and also deeply tender to watch them create new maps of our family. I don't know if we'll get back to us. Some days I believe we might, in a new shape, less naive, more honest. Other days I think the damage is too great, the small betrayals having formed a line too wide to bridge. The truth is, I don't control that outcome. I control my boundaries, my choices, my promises to my children and to myself. There are things I learned, painful, essential lessons. 1. Intimacy requires upkeep. It's not dramatic gestures, it's the maintenance of small attentions. 2. Fidelity is not just about bodies, it's about attentiveness. If you stop being interested in someone's small life, someone else who is paying attention will look very attractive. 3. Anger is not the only power we have, steadiness is. Parenting through betrayal is a form of fortitude that doesn't appear on social media. I also learned that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. You can forgive to free yourself, not to absolve the other person. Forgiveness is a tool you sharpen for your own peace. Whether I choose to forgive Katya is not a single dramatic moment. It will be a series of decisions over years. It's possible to love someone and still choose not to be with them. That sentence felt contradictory to me for a long time, but life is filled with such contradictions. People ask me why I stayed as long as I did. Others ask why I didn't leave sooner. I think both questions come from the same place, an expectation that human life should be simple and decisive. It isn't. Love is rarely an event, it's a messy, continuing process. I stayed because our children needed stability, because I was afraid of ruin, because holding on felt like the only thing I could do some nights. I left parts of myself because I haven't been honest enough before, with her, with myself. That's my responsibility. I don't want this to be a Jeremiah against her. I both love and hurt because of her. We shared years. We made 2 children. She was the one who sat with me when my dad's funeral felt like a wall to climb. She laughed at my worst jokes. She made a kitchen table into a home with food and mess and love. Remembering that does not make the betrayal less real. It just complicates the narrative the way real life always does. If you're reading this because you're in my shoes, collect yourself. Don't be ashamed to get angry or to get help. Don't let people rush you into decisions you aren't ready to make. Talk to a real therapist. Talk to someone who can offer practical advice about custody if you need it. Make sure the kids have at least one stable adult and keep rules about no adult talk when they are around. Don't let shame make you quiet. And remember, you are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by what you do next. If you're reading this because you're hurt and you're the person who betrayed, own it. Don't hide behind the tired trope that we both failed. Maybe you did fail for reasons, but don't make excuses. Be transparent. Understand that love isn't a right, it's something you maintain through countless small acts of attention. If you want back in, be prepared for the slow work. If you can't, be honest and be kind in your departure. Children live between the fault lines of their parents' mistakes. Don't let your leaving be a fissure they step into. Right now, my life is a strange mix of small griefs and small joys. I can make a joke and it will land. Sometimes I laugh and the sound feels foreign. I cook dinners that feel mostly functional. I listen to my kids recount their days with a feigned wonder that is honestly easier than it looks. I think about my marriage, and sometimes I am angry, sometimes aching, sometimes flat. The future is vague. There are legal things to do, decisions to make. Mostly there are mornings to survive and nights to get through. I still love her in certain ways. I love her when I remember the way she used to make tea that tasted like something from childhood. I love her for the little songs she sings when she cleans the kitchen. Loving someone does not mean you have to stay in a marriage that is hurting you. Love can be a reason to be brave, to choose what is healthy for your kids, for yourself, for the person you want to be. This is not a neat ending because life doesn't give tidy closures. Maybe in 5 years we'll be strangers. Maybe we'll have rebuilt something smaller and better. Maybe we'll coexist as parents who understand the limits of love. I don't know. I only know the present. The small rituals that keep the kids fed and happy. The afternoons where I map out custody schedules with a pen and a sigh. The nights when I scroll through old photos and feel nostalgic for a life that was both real and flawed. If you came here for drama, there isn't much glamour. There is mess. There is grief. There is the quiet dignity of getting up and making milk and bandaging scraped knees and then sitting on the couch alone and being allowed to grieve for a version of life that will no longer exist. That grief is sharpest when you're folding a small pair of socks and realize no amount of laundering will make the past wearable again. Edit. A few people asked for concrete timeline details in replies elsewhere, so here's what I can remember clearly, with the caveat that memory is a sieve. The affair seemed to begin in earnest about 9 months before I found the first photo. The late nights increased about 4 months before that. Those could be the emotional onset. Confrontations happened in small waves thereafter, not one huge blowout. Counseling started 2 months after confrontation. We told the kids about separation about 3 months after the affair ended. We are currently co-parenting and trying to navigate whether to divorce formally or try to reconcile on new terms. That's where we are. I don't have a moral to end on, other than this: people are messy. Love can be cruel and beautiful at the same time. If you stay, try to stay with intention. If you leave, do so with care. And if you're like me, stuck in the middle, remember you can choose what kind of person you want to be after the ruin. That is the small, salvageable thing. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps more people find stories like this. And if you'd like to hear more true stories about love, betrayal, and life lessons, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more coming, and I'd love to share them with you. See you in the next one.